All right, I'm rolling here. Just jumped in the office with Robert, my co-host Benenati.
What's going on, guys?
He never knows the subject, so I'm going to throw this at him. What do you think about charging people to be on a podcast? I want to hear your, because you have real business podcasts. You've had your own.
Yeah.
You're on mine. And the reason I ask you this is because you're not just somebody who's a guest on a podcast. You went through the whole process of the investment of creating it, reaching out to a lot of people, booking it, spending the time recording it, spending the time editing it, spending the time writing up all the content, uploading it, sharing it. You had firsthand, knowledge of what it truly is to create a podcast.
I mean, the investment of the mics and,
finding the mics,
everything.
picking them up, seeing what works.
I think, a podcast, if you have a podcast, you should be able to charge. And again, it depends who's your guest and why you're bringing them on, If you're the one doing the investment, it's your podcast and you're actually targeting certain guests on, right? For a mutual benefit, right? To help elevate your podcast, then you might have the choice of saying I won't charge, right? But if you're promoting the guest and there's no benefit to the podcaster, then feel free to charge. Yeah, why not?
Well,
it's advertising, right?
Yeah, here's my 2 cents a little bit in this, because I've been networking with a lot of people, and then some want me to be on their podcast, which I've been doing. I just did another one for Optimize Being, and I love doing it with one of my colleagues, Jason, and other people as well. But I talk to a lot of other people, and they're kind of complaining a lot that they've done a lot of podcasts and it never panned out for them.
Meaning they've been on as a guest or?
A guest.
Right, okay.
And I'm thinking you're bitching because you were on somebody else's platform and you didn't get business out of it. Well, my theory behind that a little bit is, one is you may be a shitty guest. I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
You, too, don't know how to talk on a mic.
Maybe.
Especially if you're even on a Zoom. I think people think they're all great at pitching their product, and a lot of them are boring. They don't realize it's entertainment.
Right.
They're dulling it to death. Like, they're just boring people to death. The other thing is, I think they have false expectations. Like, they're going to be on that show, and that's going to, their audience is going to love them. But the reality is, if you're good at what you do, one is start your own podcast, or number two, if you're really good, create your own content. You don't need anybody else's podcast. You're kind of going to them to get exposure, and then you don't like the exposure you got. Why is that their fault, right? To a certain degree?
Yeah, for sure.
And let me throw this out there. I don't want to get long-winded. I like when you say things as well. But I was looking at it too, is let's call it for what it is. A podcast became an infomercial. That's kind of what it is. So I have a podcast. I have someone on here, right? Well, first I wanted to have people on here so we can network with one another, like a lot of people. But I think what it became is I have a following now, most likely bigger than yours a lot of times. Not everyone. God bless. If you get somebody who gets on your podcast that has a massive following, that's a whole different thing. I'm talking about people that don't have a lot to offer necessarily. But you become an infomercial for them. Like they're sitting there the whole time pitching a lot of times their product, who they are, what they do, why you should listen to them, or whatever they're doing. And it's
I get to a certain point, right? A podcast is sharing information, right? Sharing content, sharing your thoughts, and putting it out there to the world to listen to, right? And if it helps them, fine. If it doesn't, fine, right? But if you're coming on to any podcast expecting to get something in return, especially, right away instead of long term, because a lot of people say, you know what, I heard you 6 months ago, a year ago, and I like what you said, and, now is the right time for me to call you and use your services or whatever the case is, or buy your product, then fine. But if you're coming on to any, I think any medium, right? And it could be Instagram, it could be TikTok, it could be Reels, it could be Facebook. If you're putting up content or putting up ads and expecting something right away back, immediate gratification, you're gonna fail.
let's start here. Why did you create a podcast?
I created a podcast to bring. Well, mine's originally was interview based, right? I was interviewing successful people, and successful people doesn't mean they have to be super wealthy or rich. It could be anyone that's made something out of nothing, right?
Right.
At any level. That's success for me. At least for them, that's also success, right? But I wanted to learn from people and share all their experiences, all their failures, and how they made it from point
Why do you
A.
want to do that?
Because
Let's face it, you could have just basically did a Zoom call and did that. Why did you want to do a podcast and do that?
Because I want to share the content with the world.
Right.
Because it might help their experience.
Yeah.
You know, that guest's experience of how they did whatever they did
Right.
and how they did it might help hundreds of people out there.
Right.
That maybe I can't help them, right?
Sure.
Because I didn't have that exact experience. And even myself, having the interviews I've made, I've learned a lot.
Of course.
From these people.
Yeah, for sure.
I sat here really, paying attention to their stories.
Right.
Because, again, I couldn't probably share those stories, right? And I was trying to create a platform where I can provide that. That was basically it.
And these were people you knew for the most part within kind of the same industry
Some of them,
to a certain degree, right?
Some of them.
And
I
you
mean,
found
I had
them
everything.
Yeah, you found them very interesting, and you wanted to share their content a lot of times because you're friends.
I'm in real estate,
Right.
and I probably had one or maybe two realtors. Everyone else had something else.
That's right.
And it was about that. It wasn't. I was trying to actually steer away from the real estate side and stories, and I was trying to learn other things from other entrepreneurs.
Now, you slow down a little bit doing them.
Well, I slowed down because when I started,
Yeah.
right, I started in the midst of the pandemic.
Right.
Everybody had free time.
Yep.
I had free time. And I went strong for a couple months until everything kind of picked up again.
Yeah.
Everybody got busy. Everybody was anxious again to
Yeah.
get back to work. That when even myself, including myself,
Right.
I figured out, okay, so it's hard to, I wasn't doing it. I didn't want to do them through Zoom really.
Yeah.
I wanted to be it, face to face.
Yeah.
I think it just looks better, sounds better.
Yep.
And get the full experience. And it was just hard for other people to commit to come to the show or come to the office, to the studio. So it kind of idle for me too, because I was doing this not with the intent of making any money or whatever it was. It was basically because I just wanted to do it. It was just scratch my own itch.
Yeah. And let's face it, did you think you underestimated how much time it was going to take and how much hard work?
I knew it was going to be a lot of work, but I think I did underestimate just a little bit because maybe the way I wanted to do it with the editing was just taking too long. I thought it was going to be a little bit more raw. Knowing myself, I'm more of a perfectionist.
Yep.
So I was trying to edit every single piece, and that just takes a lot of time.
I think with podcasts, too, a lot of people out there think you're making a lot of money off your podcast, which most aren't. We know it's very saturated. Or they think you have advertisers, right? Or you're making a lot of money off your YouTube, which usually isn't the case.
Neither of those.
I think people wanting to be on podcasts and have no idea what it takes to create a podcast really are kind of misled on, again, the hard work that it takes to even sustain.
You put a lot of content out. I mean, you do what, one a day maybe?
Yeah, but they're mainly audio because the video just exhausted me, which I'm going to be doing video podcasts, but not always with guests.
Right. But you put a lot out, and it takes a lot of time, and you're not making money out of this, and it's your time.
Right.
It's editing, and you have to pay also the host for the podcast to keep those episodes up and running. It does take a lot of work.
I'm not here to complain about a podcast either. We all do what we want to do. But I do think, I wonder, it's kind of frowned upon if you said, and I mentioned this to other people, hey, would you pay to be on a podcast? And they're like, hell no. You know what I mean? I'm like, why wouldn't you?
And
what do
they say?
They're just like, nobody charges for podcasts. I'm like, well, maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe if you think about it, if put it this way, I'm marketing your product. If you really think about it, to my audience, How is that free? Why would I give that away for free if you start to think about it from that perception? I was just thinking of this because I have more and more people wanting to be on our show. Of course, realtors, because of me and you, and I'm close friends with a lot of people in real estate. And I spend more time with you now, and we do these podcasts, and they see them. And they want to know why aren't they on their show, or why don't I do them? And I've done them with them before here and there, but one is they don't want to go out of their way. But even if I said I'm not going to charge my...
Well, I think that's the top reason why a lot of people don't do what they do. It's a lot of work. It's out of their way. They just don't want to do it.
Of course.
But they want it, but they don't want to put the time in.
They want to come and talk shit and get sales. How does that work for my podcast?
You edit, right? You record it, you edit, you do it all the time. I come in, talk shit, get a sale out of it, and keep going, right?
I mean, when I was doing my Zoom interview podcast, it would take me 6 to 8 hours. By the time I scheduled it, shot it, even on Zoom, took it, edited it, right? Wrote up all the content to get the subject, everything. Upload it on YouTube, put all the keywords in.
But you have to write a description.
For description. Yeah. Share it on my social media platforms. For what? To give them exposure. In return, I'm just saying, let me put it this way, and this isn't a diss on any of your guests that were on your show. At the end of the day, really, one is, a lot of people that you don't know say that are on your podcast, or you kind of know, you do it for one another, right?
Right.
What actually led out of that a lot of times? I mean, it's kind of like, who knows in 6 months what it's going to lead to, but at the end of the day, you put a lot of work and time into it. Mm-hmm. What did it really lead to, a lot of these things? Not much. It's just a video you upload it and people can watch it. I'm not saying it's not going to pan out. Maybe in the future someone sees it, wants to buy a home from you or something, or somebody, whatever the case may be. But again, it's a form of advertising. I don't care how you look at this. If you're willing to pay Google, Facebook, and everybody else to put a photo of you or put videos up of you, but you're not willing to go on someone's podcast and pay for it, either you devalue the podcast, devalue your product, or you don't believe in the podcasting forum within that person.
All right, so you're for the charge.
Yeah, I'm 100% for the charge now.
What would you charge?
I don't know. I'll tell you the truth, though, but if somebody's going to come to you, you should charge them around $500, and I'm not exaggerating. What are you going to do with $100 an hour on a podcast? By the time I'm spending 8 hours for this person, schedule, shoot it, do everything for them, for what? $3 an hour? Again, you're using my platform. If I have well over 1,000 people on my YouTube, or say I have 16, 20,000 people on my social media, look at who I'm giving them access to. Look at all the people I'm giving.
You're right.
Even if it didn't work out for them, too bad for you. That's on you. Maybe my audience isn't for you. Maybe you shouldn't be on my podcast. I also find it ironic, too. I'm going to wrap it up with this, and then you could say whatever you want. I've been seeing people who have a very well-known podcast that are like, hey, if we accept you, go on here, and if we accept you, wonderful. That makes sense to me. Yeah, you have a massive following. It would be a privilege to be on your podcast. On the flip side, I'm not saying that. But maybe, too, if you have a huge following, maybe charge and say,
And it depends, on your following and what you have as a podcaster. Because, if, for example, Joe Rogan, you think he's going to go interview anyone?
Of course not.
Yeah.
But people think everything's like Joe Rogan. The difference is he got a $100 million deal, so he can, right? I mean.
Yeah, but he's picking his guests.
Of course he is. The difference with him, too, is he had 3 different avenues to have great guests. 99.9% of us don't have. You're a well-known actor, comedian. You're doing MMA on top of that. You know what I mean? And a podcast. So, yeah, it's a whole different thing. His accessibility in L.A. is unbelievable. Anyways, I don't mean to rip on people, but I definitely, me and you have these discussions because I kind of always hit you out of left field. And then when I talk to you, sometimes you're like, that's kind of.
You come in ranting over there.
No, and I don't want to. You had one. But a lot of people, like I said, they want to be a part of what you're doing for free. And believe me, I am all about networking and helping as many people as possible.
It's true. I know a lot of people that have podcasts that they do it for the love of it, right?
Like us.
And they don't have guests on. They just, do monologues.
That's what I do too.
Yeah. And they do it for the love of it, for themselves, to scratch their own itch, to feel good about it, to share, right? And they don't get anything out of it. And they grow eventually, right? They start growing, but
maybe not.
Maybe not. Sometimes it just, it gets stuck at 500 followers, and that's the end of that, right? But they continue doing it.
Maybe it'd be better too if you reached out to people that will pay because then you can maybe build off of that and,
I
do a lot more.
I would help anyone that's trying to start a podcast.
Yeah.
Reach out to me, and I'll tell you exactly what you need, how to do it. Go ahead and
that's what me and you did.
Start your own stuff. Yeah.
That's how me and you met.
Yep.
I mean, if it was for the podcast, probably, right? I think it was the podcast.
Yeah, it was that. Yeah.
And you told me I was nuts. Everything I told you not to do. Thank God you didn't.
Yeah, don't do this. Don't do that. I went the opposite way. I did exactly what you told me not to do.
Good for you. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. I don't even know what the hell to call this, but we're going to be talking about real estate.
Pay to be on a podcast.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be on someone's podcast, you're not willing to pay for it, then maybe you shouldn't be on it. I'm just saying. I don't know. That's just my idea. You got any questions or comments? I'm at richcelenza.com. Robert has a real business podcast. If you check that out on YouTube as well. Right?
I got to get back on it.
No, you do what you do. You got to go where your energy leads you. Well, let's put it this way. We're in Florida. He owns a real estate firm, and the real estate market just exploded. I don't even know where you would find you. That was timing. It was COVID, and I'm not trying to make excuses for you, but you got hit with COVID. So then, let's face it, no one really wanted to come and meet you, with the exception of me, to do videos because everybody was afraid of one another, kind of getting each other sick. Didn't want to leave the house. Yeah, that was another thing.
A lot of people told me, "Well, how are we going to do this? Zoom?" And I was like, "No, come to the office. We're a little 6 feet apart."
Right. And then the husbands, the wives, they're all afraid to leave, and then you got caught with the market exploding.
A lot of people hesitated.
For sure. But yeah, check it out. Real business. All right, that's it, my friend.
That's it.
All right.